there's only one thing that this music can mean. If you can hear this music, yeah, you know it. The Life and Times of Mr. Perfect DVD. Yeah, I got this about a week ago. Kind of cut price from where you'd normally see it in HMV. It was about £8 or £9 of silvervision.co.uk, and yeah, it's pretty much a standard. Oh my god, it goes into the remix there. Yeah, you know, your standard WWE profile documentary release. Of course, it's on Mr. Perfect, a wrestler I've always loved and always liked. Even when I was young, I couldn't help but not like him, just because he had the skills and attributes to be a great wrestler, and he really showed it in his matches that he had. And yeah, it has a documentary, and it has a various amount of matches, and all his vignettes, you know, where he's like playing bowling perfectly, and pool and snooker, and yeah, and golf and all that, and it has all of those, which is a really good plus point to this DVD. The documentary itself, I don't think it's the perfect documentary for Mr. Perfect CURT HENNIG. Basically, it wasn't that long. It was like only an hour and a quarter long, and it's a good tribute to the life and times of Mr. Perfect, but I don't think it really went that in depth into his runs as I would have liked it to be honest. It didn't really, well, I vaguely remember like stories in Power Slam magazine of him having a few drug problems and that, and of course he overdosed on cocaine and that's how he died, and they didn't really go into that, and how he like took out the Lloyd's of London insurance policy and then basically screwed him over a bit by like returning to the ring. Didn't really mention those things, but it had like lots of Mr. Perfect CURT HENNIG's family and friends talking about him and his life, celebrating his life. Had a few wrestlers talking about how they admired him, especially his matches with him and Brett, and that was like one of the only kind of like feud series that they like really go into. They talk about his run about the commentator, and of course this earlier run in the AWA, and it's all good. It's good content, but it's not enough for me. I wanted something a bit more in depth, I guess. What I did like about the documentary part though is that it like talked about his backstage ribbing and stuff like that, and that was a very good chapter. And also it had like some of the outtakes from the vignettes he did, and yeah, that was just quite fun, I thought. But yeah, the documentary's alright, but as I said, it could have gone way more in depth over like his runs, like certain times, and some of the feuds he was in or whatever. But it's still good, it's still very watchable. I'll definitely watch it again. As for the matches and special features, it has the Hall of Fame induction, which is a pleasant watch. Disc 1, it has him in a tag team with Scott Hall, who looks like a hell of a different man with a moustache and kind of muscly. He looks a bit green, to be honest. It's from 1985 in the AWA. Has a tag match of them against Steve Regal and Jimmy Garvin. Not the Steve Regal we all know and love. But, yeah, it was a bit of another tag match. It's alright, quite entertaining. It also has CURT HENNIG versus Eddie Gilbert from 1982 in Madison Square Garden, when he did a few appearances for the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, for Vince Sr. Yeah, it was a good match. It was quite slow, but it like picked up towards the last 5 minutes. And then it was a time limit draw. It also has the Rapper's Crap music video, which was great. I hadn't heard that song in years, and oh, it's just good stuff. Very funny. You knew he had a sense of humour from that kind of thing. And on disc 2, the matches. Yeah, it has the 60-minute time limit draw between Nick Bockwinkel and Curt Hennig. And this is the first time I've seen the legend Nick Bockwinkel wrestle. And yeah, he was a hell of a worker, wasn't he? I loved this match a lot. I think a lot of people who've just got into wrestling would think it's a bit slow and stuff, but it was great. You know, had them working on certain body parts for ages and just showing their technique. And it ended like in a hell load of blood, crimson mask, and it was good stuff. I loved that match. Definitely, that's kind of worth getting this DVD for, I think. Then it goes into a Curt Hennig versus Terry Taylor, which has audio commentary by Michael Cole and Mick Foley. And this is a bit of a nothing match, and it's a bit strange that this was on here, to be honest. And when you were watching it, like, you could tell the crowd were like facing the other way, as if something else was going on in the arena. And it kind of sucked. It was alright what was there in the ring, but it just wasn't very long. And I think it's just on the DVD, so Michael Cole and Mick Foley could talk about Curt a little bit. Then there's Mr. Perfect against Bret Hitman Hart, when Hart was in his Hart Foundation days. And this is a really good match too, as you'd expect from them, but went to a time limit draw, which kind of sucks. You know, with Mr. Perfect's Stone DVD, I would have liked to see him be dominant and stuff. Then it's an MSG match against Hulk Hogan, and that was a good match. You know, typical Hulk match of a lot of dominating. Perfect was selling for him well, and Hulk hulked up out of the Perfect Flex, and it was a very good, entertaining match. I would have loved to have seen something on pay-per-view between these guys, but obviously they had like the big programs in between the pay-per-views those days. There's Texas Tornado against Roddy Piper, against Mr. Perfect with Roddy Piper as the referee. It was quite a good match, yeah. Roddy Piper was a very aggressive referee. Bit of a weird finish. Perfect went for a back suplex, and both their shoulders are down, but Mr. Perfect's is the one that got counted, so he was on the losing end. Then there's the classic SummerSlam confrontation between Hitman against Mr. Perfect, 1991, and this is a match that wrestling fans have got to see because it is awesome, and it totally elevates Bret Hart into a singles contender and the star he became, basically, I think. Then there's Shawn Michaels vs Mr. Perfect from SummerSlam 93, which is an alright match, but nowhere near as good as you'd hope it to be. It seemed like they were picking up to gear, but then it just like kind of ended, and there's like stuff with Diesel, and there's a count-out victory for Shawn, and Perfect didn't look very strong. And it ends on Curt Hennig vs Bret Hart in WCW Uncensored. And this is quite a good match. Not as good as the other two matches they had on the disc, but it's good, like, for the fact they had Mr. Perfect had Rick Rude in his corner, and Rick Rude was like really good as a backup manager at this point. It was great, and it was just there, you know. It was just like one of those matches that like ebbed and flowed, and because they're such good workers, they're kind of like on autopilot, and it just worked well. It was good. But yeah, that's the content of this Mr. Perfect DVD, The Life and Times of. I'd definitely recommend getting this if you can get it at a cut price, but I wouldn't pay 25 quid for it in HMV, to be honest. I think there's stuff they could have put on it. I think they could have made this a free disco, really. They could have had like that Survivor Series match he was in when he was on the winning team and he was really dominant. And they could have his matches with Tito Santana. Trying to think what other programs he's been in. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. If you like Mr. Perfect, you'd enjoy it. It's far from the perfect DVD, but very enjoyable nonetheless. So there's my thoughts on that. Cheers. Let me know what you think of the man, the legend, Curt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. And of this DVD if you have it. Cheers.